In the suffocating darkness, 40 feet beneath the earth, her whimpers had grown impossibly weak. The freezing rainwater was inching up her trembling paws, threatening to swallow her whole. She didn't know why the ground had vanished beneath her, only that the biting cold was winning, and she was entirely alone in the pitch black. But just as her heavy, mud-caked eyelids began to close in defeat, a faint, muffled sound broke through the roaring storm above. A sliver of light pierced the dark. Someone was coming. The relentless rain had been falling for 3 unbroken days, transforming the rolling hills and rural outskirts of the city into a desolate, unforgiving landscape of thick mud and swelling. Treacherous creeks. The sky was a perpetual bruised canvas of dark grays and purples, hanging suffocatingly low over the saturated fields and threatening to drown the earth entirely. In the middle of an overgrown, long-abandoned pasture, miles away from the nearest paved road, stood an old stone well. It was a relic from a century past, built by early settlers and long forgotten by the modern world. Hidden beneath a dense, tangled canopy of rotting blackberry brambles and decaying, waterlogged wood, the well had become nothing more than a lethal hazard waiting in the dark. The heavy oak boards that had once sealed its mouth had surrendered to decades of rot, collapsing inward and leaving a jagged, black hole in the saturated earth. Deep inside the suffocating blackness of that narrow, vertical shaft, nearly 40 feet below the storm-battered surface, a golden retriever mix clung desperately to her fading life. She had likely been wandering, disoriented and terrified by the fierce thunder of the storm, seeking any semblance of shelter when the earth simply vanished beneath her paws. The fall would have been a terrifying blur of scraping stone and rushing air. Now, she was perched precariously on a crumbling, moss-covered stone ledge barely wider than her own trembling body. The icy rainwater funneling down from the flooded fields above was rising rapidly within the cylindrical stone walls, swirling just inches below the animal's muddy, torn paws. Above ground, an older local farmer named Arthur was making a miserable but necessary trek to check the integrity of his lower valley fencing. His boots sank ankle-deep into the freezing muck with every grueling step. Just as he paused to catch his breath, leaning heavily against a wooden fence post, the wind momentarily died down. In that brief, fragile pocket of silence, he heard it. It was a faint, rhythmic cry that sounded too much like utter despair to be the wind. Arthur froze, pulling the hood of his slicker back to expose his ears to the freezing rain. Another whimper cut through the ambient roar of the storm. He immediately abandoned his fence line, tracking the ghostly sound through the knee-high mud and parting the vicious, thorny brambles that tore at his heavy waterproof coat. When he finally stumbled upon the jagged, dark opening hidden in the brush, his heart plummeted. He knelt in the mud, pulling a heavy-duty tactical flashlight from his belt. As he aimed the harsh beam down into the abyss, the light struggled to pierce the gloom, catching on the sheets of water cascading down the ancient masonry. But there, at the very edge of the light's reach, he saw the reflection of 2 terrified, amber eyes looking up at him from the dark. With shaking, freezing fingers, he fumbled for his cell phone, praying he had a signal in the valley. When the emergency dispatcher finally answered, his voice cracked against the howling wind. Within 30 minutes, the heavy, aggressive hum of a specialized technical rescue truck tore through the flooded access road. Its flashing red and blue strobes painted the falling rain in chaotic, urgent strokes of color. A highly trained technical rope rescue team piled out of the cab, instantly shifting into a gear of focused precision. They battled the elements as they rapidly unloaded heavy-duty tripods, thick coils of static rope, climbing hardware, and massive portable floodlights. The team leader, a seasoned veteran named Marcus, crawled on his stomach to the treacherous edge of the well and peered over. "Water is rising fast," Marcus yelled over his shoulder to his rigging team. "That ledge won't hold her much longer. I'm going in." Marcus stepped into a heavy-duty extraction harness, pulling the straps tight against his thick weather gear. His crew worked with wordless efficiency, assembling a tripod directly over the center of the crumbling hole. The descent was agonizingly slow, calculated and overwhelmingly claustrophobic. As Marcus was lowered inch by inch into the earth, the rough stone walls pressed in on him from all sides. The temperature dropped dramatically. Freezing water poured onto his helmet, chilling him to the bone. He kept his headlamp aimed straight down, murmuring softly and continuously to keep the dog focused on the approaching light rather than the terrifying swirling water just below her paws. At 35 feet down, the focused beam of Marcus's helmet lamp finally washed over the dog completely. The golden retriever was plastered flat against the curved stone wall, trying to make herself as small as possible. She was shivering so violently that the entire stone ledge seemed to vibrate beneath her. As Marcus dangled in his harness just a few feet above the rising waterline, he reached out a slow, deliberate, gloved hand. "Hey, sweet girl. I've got you," Marcus whispered gently. He let his hand rest near her snout. As she took in his scent and the calm rhythm of his voice, the fight visibly drained out of her. She let out a long, shuddering sigh and pushed her wet, freezing snout firmly into his open palm. Securing the heavy-duty rescue harness was a delicate, high-stakes dance. Marcus carefully wrapped the thick, padded straps around the dog's chest, securing them tightly. She went completely limp, surrendering her entire body weight to Marcus's careful movements. With a sharp tug on the line, the mechanical advantage winch system operated by the surface team began to turn. The dog buried her face deeply into Marcus's shoulder, seeking warmth and safety against his cold, wet gear as they were hauled steadily upward toward the faint gray light of the surface. The moment they broke the threshold of the well, the surface team surged forward. Marcus and the golden mix cleared the dangerous lip, collapsing together onto the muddy, rain-soaked grass. A bright orange, foil-lined thermal emergency blanket was whipped open and wrapped tightly around the violently shivering dog. The heavy rain pounded against them, washing the thick layers of mud from her coat. She didn't try to run. Instead, she leaned her entire heavy body weight against Marcus's leg. The frantic terror in her eyes was gone, replaced by profound exhaustion and an undeniable trust. She offered one slow, tired lick to Marcus's mud-caked hand, a quiet thank you for pulling her from the edge of the dark. But her journey was not over. The team immediately transferred the shivering dog to a heated animal ambulance, rushing her out of the storm and into the bright, sterile environment of a local veterinary hospital. A team of dedicated doctors and nurses went to work. They carefully examined her from nose to tail, checking her vitals and cleaning the remaining debris from her fur. Miraculously, aside from severe exhaustion, mild hypothermia, and a few minor scrapes on her paws, she was completely healthy. Under the warm glow of heat lamps, she was given a massive bowl of nutritious food and a soft, dry bed. For the first time in days, she slept deeply and without fear. A week later, fully recovered and showcasing a brilliant, brushed golden coat, she was transferred to the city's premier animal adoption center. She quickly became a favorite among the staff, her gentle demeanor and resilient spirit shining brightly. It didn't take long for her story to reach the right ears. One sunny afternoon, a wealthy, sharply dressed family walked into the adoption center. A little girl, no older than 7, led the way, pulling her father's hand with barely contained excitement. As they walked down the aisle of enclosures, the little girl stopped dead in her tracks in front of the golden retriever's room. The dog, sensing a kindred spirit, walked to the glass and tilted her head. The little girl knelt down, pressing her small hand against the glass. The dog mirrored the movement, pressing her wet nose against the little girl's fingers. It was love at first sight. The parents, seeing the immediate and profound bond, smiled warmly and immediately signaled the staff. They spent the next hour completing all the necessary legal paperwork, happily paying the adoption fees, and securing all the premier supplies a dog could ever need. As the sun began to set, the golden retriever walked proudly out of the adoption center's front doors on a brand new leather leash, right beside the little girl who hadn't let go of her since they met. They climbed into the spacious back seat of a sleek, luxury SUV. As the car drove away from the center, heading toward a beautiful, sprawling home, the golden dog rested her head on the windowsill. She watched the world roll by, her tail giving a soft, contented thump against the leather seats. She was warm, she was loved, and she was finally, truly home.